Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Podcast. The first guest of the day is the host of the Life New York podcast. He covers the Mets for WFAN. He produces SiriusXM NFL Radio. He writes for Sports Betting Dime. He does work for the New York Post. Jake Brown, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and that's I couldn't be any better.
Yeah, exactly. Good timing for you to come on. We'll get right into the Mets. Obviously, they agreed to pretty much sell the team. The Wilpons are selling their stake pretty much to a rich guy, Bill Cohen. He's going to get 80% of the team. He already owns 4% of it, but he's going to have 80% of it. I believe it's like a 5-year window for the Wilpons. What was your first initial reaction when Ken Rosenthal broke the news yesterday afternoon?
Well, it didn't really hit me at first because I was so busy with doing shows and stuff that once I saw him and I dove into it, I'm like, this is actually happening. I mean, he's getting 80% of the team, and it's a new era. I mean, the Mets become a big-time franchise, big-time New York market team again, like the Red Sox, Yankees, and Dodgers, and we'll finally be able to spend like those teams do. There's no more penny pinching, no more coupons. So this is a big moment for the franchise. Like, he's a diehard fan. He's from Queens. He's Jewish. I mean, he's half the Mets fan base, essentially. So everything about him you got to love, and he really wants his team to win. So I think this payroll is going to increase by a lot. I think they're going to go after free agents. They're going to get some big names when he eventually takes over. I think he could end up having a say before 2025. But it is a big moment for the franchise, and I think there are championships to come that weren't really as hopeful as they are now.
Yeah, that was my initial reaction as well. And it's funny because 2 days ago, Tiki Barber said something on his show, and it was like a trend on Twitter, and nobody believed in Tiki Barber. Him and Brandon Tierney have their show, and he said something like he was hearing rumblings, and nobody believed it. And then I didn't know about the whole Tiki Barber thing until after Ken Rosenthal broke the story, and everybody's like, oh, everyone has to owe Tiki Barber an apology. Then I went and listened to a clip of him saying that. I'm like, oh, wow, he did end up predicting that. So did you know about the Tiki Barber thing before Ken Rosenthal reported it, or no?
I didn't, but people got to put, Tiki's my guy. I have a good relationship with him. I know a lot of people hate on Tiki, but put some respect in his name. MLB Insider now. He's also sang to me when I had him on my show a couple of years ago. He sang Chestnuts Roasting on Open Fire. So people don't know that Tiki Barber is a singer, a Broadway star, a former NFL player, and radio host, and now Baseball Insider. So he knows people in the financial industry. He's in that space a little bit. So good for Tiki, kind of getting a little nugget before these so-called Baseball Insiders got it.
Yeah, and I was like very surprised once I found out that Tiki found out that little nugget once after I found out the real story from Ken Rosenthal, and I'm like, oh my god, he had that. I got to give him props for that. And speaking of the Mets, they made a minor trade today, trading 2 prospects to Houston for Jake Marisnick. I think that he's going to be like a 4th outfielder for you guys. What did you make of this deal?
Well, I made of it that it's a very Wilpon-esque move. It's hopefully something that Cohen is not going to do. Let's hope that it is 4th outfielder. I think if that's the case, he'll split time with Brandon Nimmo. You have McNeil, you have Davis, and you have Cespedes coming back and left. You got Conforto and right. So you're really set in the outfield now. But I was really preferring that they went and traded for Starling Marte. I just thought defensively and offensively he gives you a lot. Marisnick is kind of like a little bit of an upgrade from Juan Lagares for a little bit cheaper. Listen, you're only paying him a couple million. It's not the end of the world. But let's just hope he's not the everyday guy. You want him to be the late-game defensive replacement. You want him to maybe play versus lefties, since Nimmo doesn't hit lefties as well. He's got to be a part-time player for this to make sense. So it's a little frustrating that they didn't aim higher, but at least they have someone who's strong defensively. The real focus for this team has to be the bullpen. That's what they should be trying to get before some of these arms go. They've already lost out on a couple arms, so their next move should be kind of getting that bullpen revamped.
Yeah, I do think they're going to make some signings to improve their bullpen. I think Dellin Betances is in play for them, but I think it's more likely he goes back to the Yankees than to the Mets. I think that somebody like Sam Dyson could be in play for them. He's a solid reliever. Maybe somebody that's a swing guy like Colin McHugh from the Astros. There's some other guys that I think that they have potential to sign.
Than that. I'd like them. I'd like them to get like someone like a Joe Smith. I think Steve Cishek is a good one. Will Harris.
Will Harris be good too.
That's Sam Dyson. Yeah.
Yeah.
Joe Smith and Cishek are the two that I look at. And then if you can pull off a trade for Hader, I mean, if they could get Hader, Smith, and Cishek, I think that's a hell of a bullpen if they could pull it off.
Yeah, I didn't even think about Joe Smith. Josh Hader's interesting. His name has been like the latest big name player to be thrown in the trade mill. That one surprised me a lot. I wonder if the Brewers are going to put out their big names like potentially on the market. Not Yelich, obviously, but like they said Hader, maybe even Lorenzo Cain. I heard potentially that they could put Cain on the market and see what they can get for him. He's somebody that's a little overpaid, but I'm fascinated to see what they do. That division really is kind of in an interesting place because the Reds are getting better. The Cardinals are apparently after Bumgarner now. Cubs are probably going to trade some star players. Brewers already traded some pieces away. Lost Grandal. So I think that division is a little bit really like in a state of kind of flux in a weird way with the Cubs and whatnot, although the Reds are getting better. Another interesting thing yesterday was that the Phillies signed Zach Wheeler. Do you think they overpaid for him?
Oh, 100%. I mean, Zach Wheeler is nearly making Jacob deGrom money. I can't even say the line seriously. It's so ridiculous. DeGrom is light years better than Zach Wheeler. I mean, you're going to pay this guy, what is it, around $22 million a year. Zach Wheeler, he struck it rich in a free agency class that isn't elite. He struck it rich at a time where teams are looking for right-handed pitchers and looking for starters that have sub-4 ERAs. But Zach Wheeler is a $22 million a year pitcher. I mean, you could call the Mets penny pitching all you want. If I'm the Mets, I never offer Zach Wheeler that much money. But listen, he's going to end up being the Mets in the next 5 years. We know how it goes. You leave the Mets, you come back, and you beat them multiple times, and you stay in the division. I think it's like ex-Mets like dreams. I think they dream all season of leaving the team and going somewhere else in the division and beating them because it happens over and over again, and it's insane how many times it does. With that being said, overpaid, and I honestly think he's going to regress. I think now he got paid. I think he's going to see a different pitcher, and he's also pitching in a bandbox. I mean, Zach Wheeler, I don't think he's going to have a ton of success pitching at Citizens Bank. That park is not a pitcher's ballpark, and Zach Wheeler needs a pitcher's ballpark because he gives up a lot of fly balls. So we'll see how he does. I think he regresses though a bit, but I'm glad the Mets didn't pay him.
Yeah, I give the Mets a pass for not bringing back Wheeler for the reasons you said. I think that he was overpaid. I think that he could regress. I agree with you there. Small ballpark. And I know the Phillies are desperate because they haven't made the playoffs in so long. But I think that was a mega overpay. And it's funny, I'm just listening to MLB Network before I had you on. Apparently Frank Isola, formerly of New York Daily News, predicted that Zach Wheeler was going to get 5 years, $100 million. And then he got mocked on MLB Network for it, and then they showed that highlight of that, and they're like, oh, wow, he was right. So I thought that was very interesting, and it's funny because obviously Frank Isola is known for reporting the Knicks and not baseball. What do you make of that?
Oh, Frank is, he's kind of a clown, but, I don't think it's a crazy prediction. I think a lot of people were expecting him to get a lot of money. So, I mean, you can make fun of him all you want, but I think a lot of people with this free agency class and with what Wheeler did last year, he showed flashes that he was number 2, number 3 starter. And number 2, number 3 starters at his age in baseball today are getting around $20 million. I just don't think he is that kind of pitcher, especially with his past injury problems. Those things could always come back. So, congrats to Frank. It's NBA. It's other sports breaking other sports news. I guess this week it's Frank Isola and Tiki Barbershop.
Yeah, that's right. But the Tiki one is obviously a bigger deal because that's obviously a much bigger story. Let's switch over to the other baseball team in town, the Yankees. The big story there is that they met with Steven Strasburg and Garrett Cole. I think it's more likely they land Cole than Strasburg. What do you think is the likelihood that they land one of these guys?
Yeah, I think there's a good shot they land Cole. I said that, before the season ended. Excuse me. I thought that he was Yankee bound. I mean, endless pockets, and it's going to be, it's going to be good that the Mets won't be, restricted and kind of be right there with the Yankees at least in 2025. I have to wait 5 years, but I think they get one of the two. The Yankees need a starter. They need help pitching. It's been their weak point the last couple of years. So I like you. I would also put my money on Cole, but we'll see. Cashman's been acting a little differently over the last couple of years, and relying on his youth and hoping that those youth arms get the job done. But I think if there ever is a time to pay Cole, it's right now, and you throw him right as your ace.
Yeah, and I actually was against them signing Patrick Corbin last year because Corbin is nowhere as good as Garrett Cole. And Garrett Cole is the best free agent pitcher in my mind since Max Scherzer in 2014, arguably better than that. And I wanted the Yankees to sign Scherzer in 2014, but they didn't because the Yankees were in a different time with a lot of veterans on the team, and their window had closed at that point. Jeter was retired and whatnot. But now this is the time that they have to strike and get one of these big-name ace-like starting pitchers. And I personally think that Garrett Cole is the more likely option. Let's switch over to the NFL real quick. The big NFL story of the week, obviously, regarding in New York is that Daniel Jones has the ankle injury, and Eli Manning will be starting on Monday Night Football in all likelihood against the Philadelphia Eagles. You seem to be loving this move, don't you?
Yeah, I had a lot of people agree with me, but I also had a lot of people disagree with me, and I'm sorry, but I'm right on this. First off, Daniel Jones is hurt, so anyone who's mad about the move, there's nothing you can do. The guy's hurt. I mean, there's no reason to play him. You're 2-10, and he's got an ankle injury. You don't want to risk this guy tearing his ACL, getting a similar injury to what Trevor Siemian with the Jets got with his ankle earlier this year. So you don't want to lose him for next year. So playing him hurt or even near hurt the rest of the season is just stupid. Second of all, I don't know how it was going if Eli was going to see any time, and I don't think he would have started just a pity last game of the season at MetLife. So it works out that he doesn't have to come in a kind of a pity role where he comes in because they need him. They need a quarterback. He's the guy. So I love it for that. I love that he's kind of going to get somewhat of a proper send-off. Might sell some seats at MetLife for meaningless games. And, it's a no-brainer. And I don't get people hating it. I mean, people are saying, it doesn't bring intrigue. Of course it does. It's Eli getting to play. It's Eli Manning. Eli's a story. He's a Hall of Famer. And you get to see him a couple more times. So anyone who says it's not and it doesn't add intrigue, I don't know what they've been watching all season because the Giants have been unwatchable. I don't want to hear, we're watching Jones progress. You're watching him progress with a terrible offensive line. You're watching him progress with an awful defense and a team that's not suiting him up properly to be a great quarterback. So if you're a Giants fan, you should want to rest him up and see him next year with hopefully a good draft, a good free agency, and an improved O-line that gives him time to throw, and you don't have to worry about the fumbling problems. So I was fired up about that because a lot of people were tweeting me like how stupid that was. There's a lot of people who agreed, but people saying, this tree, like, come on, this sucks. Like, you want to see Jones? One guy talked about, he got his fumbling problems over. Like, he just went fumbling or this happens. I'm like, his fumbling problems, he didn't fumble it. Like, does he want a cookie for one game for not fumbling in football? I'm like, turnovers in 10 games. Give me a break.
Yeah, and I saw you and Sean Morosa going back and forth. Sean Morosa, obviously, of CBS and WFAN, and he was saying that, like, how Jones was, like, the only reason to watch the Giants. Well, I loved watching Daniel Jones progress as well, but I agree with you in the standpoint of rest him up. You don't want him to damage the injury more. Like, I agree with you from that standpoint. And the Eli thing is a little intriguing because, for the reasons you said, because it's like a send-off, and I kind of would like the idea of them beating the Eagles at least once to ruin their playoff chances just for fun, but at the same time, I want Chase Young, but there are other teams that are trying for Chase Young too, and I think Chase Young is one of the best defensive players to come in the draft in a long, long time. So there's like all those possibilities. And then there's the obvious storyline of Pat Shurmur and Dave Gettleman and their futures. Steve Tisch spoke with Bruce Beck of NBC recently about how him and John Mara have to have like an honest assessment about the team. I think Shurmur's gone, no doubt about it. How about Dave Gettleman? Do you think he could be out the door as well?
Yeah, Shurmur's definitely gone. Gettleman, I don't know. I think he may get one more year, honestly.
It's interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, I think he gets one more year. I think they got to have one more draft, see what happens. You know, a lot of people I'm not completely sold on Jones yet. I think he's going to be the quarterback. I mean, there's no denying that next year, but I'm not completely sold on him. I think we need to see 1 year of Jones and improved O-line and see what he does in the offseason with defense and see what new head coach he brings in. Now, if he doesn't bring a new head coach, I would if I'm the owner, I would just can him immediately because Shurmur's got to go. The guy's just completely delusional. He's lost and can't develop a game plan that works for this team. So, I'll say Gettleman goes one more year, and I say Shurmur's gone.
I think Shurmur's no doubt gone. I think there's a chance Gettleman's gone too because those Tisch comments, I don't think were just talking about Shurmur. I think it was referring to Gettleman too. I didn't feel super good about Gettleman losing his job, but after Tisch's comments, I think that there's a better chance than people think that Gettleman could be fired. Let's say Gettleman keeps his job, and you're right. What do you think of the idea of Ron Rivera being hired as the next Giants head coach? I don't mind Ron Rivera.
No, I think Ron's good. I'm sick of these hot coordinators turn head coaches. Make the playoffs, you're a coordinator. Ron's aggressive, the whole Riverboat Ron nickname. I think he's got experience. He's been in Super Bowl. I'm fine with that. I mean, there's not a ton of experienced names that are going to be out there, and why not go for a guy that's won before? I'd take Ron Rivera. I don't think many Giants fans would be upset with that. Just got to get the right coaching. James Bettcher has just been an embarrassment of a defensive coordinator. I mean, their defense has not improved in the slightest all year. So we'll see what coaching staff he would bring around him. But, I'm cool with Riverboat Ron. I'm
very cool with Riverboat Ron. He helped develop Cam Newton. He needs a good offensive coordinator to come with him. I'm not a super Mike Shula fan, although Shula worked under Rivera in Carolina. But I remember Rivera was on the hot seat in his third year at Carolina, and they went 12-4, and that was the year Cam Newton broke out and became a good quarterback. And then 2 years later, they went 15-1. Cam was the MVP, and they were in the Super Bowl. And they lost that Super Bowl because that Denver defense was just out of their minds in that game, really. But you could argue that I think Ron Rivera deserves more credit in Carolina for what he did there than people have given him. So I wouldn't mind Ron Rivera as the next Giants head coach at all. Speaking of head coaches, Adam Gase, do you think he's back another year with the Jets?
Well, he will be. I mean, Johnson already guaranteed that he will be, so unfortunately he will be. I don't think it's exactly the right move, but you could also argue that you got to give these guys time. It is too soon. Listen, I think he should be can, but he's not going. Now, and the question is, does he can next year? That'll depend. He's going to be on a short leash. If they start off next year at 0-4 or whatever it is, he's going to get fired. But unless they lose out and they get clobbered these last 4 weeks, I think Gase will be back next year.
I think Gase is back next year as well. That Cincinnati loss and the Miami loss were obviously two really, really rough losses for the Jets this year. And then they had that nice little run against the Giants, the Redskins, and the Raiders, who are all bad defensive teams, and Darnold played really well in those games. So I think Gase will be back, and I think that his seat will be really, really hot going into next season. Within the Jets division are the Patriots, who just lost to the Texans. Are you concerned with Tom Brady at all? Do you think he's really headed towards the end here?
Well, he is headed toward the end, but every time someone gets concerned with the Patriots, they just go out of that thing called the Super Bowl every time. So every time we want to critique them for their offense is sluggish, defense stinks, blah blah blah, they go in. So I'm not in the boat to start saying Tom Brady's finished and that team's finished yet. Listen, they're a year older. They've had a lot of turnover in terms of the whole Antonio Brown thing, the whole Josh Gordon thing. There's been a lot of this stuff going on in that locker room that it's hard for a team. And while we're saying this, they're still 10-2. I mean, we're worried about a team that's 10-2, and listen, defense wins championships, and their defense is elite, might be the best in football. So I'm curious to see them go up against the Ravens again if it happens in the playoffs. I think it would be an incredible rematch, and we'll see. It might be Lamar Jackson's athleticism and speed, and now his improved arm might get the best of Brady this year. Listen, they don't win every year, so they'll be in the playoffs. Obviously, they'll be in probably the AFC Championship. It'll just be if they top Lamar Jackson. But I'm not ready to say they're finished and the season's over because they lost the game.
Yeah, I certainly think that they're in play for a first-round bye, obviously. The Bills are right up their tail, though, at 9-3. How surprised are you about them?
I'm very surprised. I'll be honest. I'm a big Bills supporter, thinking that this team was that great. Josh Allen has really looked good. I'm surprised the steps he's did. I mean, the thing with Josh Allen, his rookie year, he's making a lot of dumb throws and crazy runs. And it seems like he's toned it down a little bit this year. And Devin Singletary, the rookie running back, has been tremendous for them. Having I say a side piece in a future Hall of Famer, Frank Gore, is huge for Singletary in the backfield. They just have some pieces, and they don't have a ton of receivers, but guys like Dawson Knox have stepped up, and John Brown, my uncle, and they find ways to win, and they got a good defense. So, listen, I'm surprised. I don't think they're going to do that many in the playoffs, but the fact that they're probably going to make one of the wild cards, I am very surprised by.
Yeah, they might end up 11-5, 12-4 in the wild card, because the AFC is kind of a mixed bag. You have them and the Ravens and the Texans and the Chiefs and the Patriots, and then you have like those mediocre-ish teams like Pittsburgh, Oakland, Tennessee, and then like those kind of teams like the Browns, the Broncos, and the Jaguars who have all underachieved in weird ways, and then the bad teams like the Jets and the Dolphins and the Bengals. So the AFC is kind of like in tears right now, and I'm very fascinated to see how that plays out. Let's switch over to some of the other New York sports topics. Another coach that is on the hot seat, and I think his seat is hotter than Pat Shurmur's right now, and that's David Fizdale of the New York Knicks. They played tonight against the Nuggets, and I think that there's a chance Fizdale's fired before Christmas. When do you think Fizdale is finally going to be let go as Knicks head coach?
Yeah, I think it might be before 2020. The problem is they're not competing. And we knew the Knicks would win a lot of games, but they're a better team on paper, at least, than their record right now. And Fizdale struggled with rotations, with getting guys playing time. There's been times where guys have been sitting on the pine for a while, and he's on the hot seat. His seat is scorching right now, and they're 4-20, 5-25. Say when the end of the month hits, I don't know how you bring him in the second half of next year. It's just awful. What's been going on? Julius Randle's been bad. The young players are regressing. You want guys to develop and young players to get better, and they've only gotten worse. So if that's the case, why do you have a head coach? So, I think he does get fired at some point over the next month or so.
Yeah, I think he's fired before Pat Shurmur and certainly before Adam Gase. I just don't think Adam Gase is getting fired this calendar year. I think that it'll be Fizdale first, and then Shurmur. And then the coach that was the first one fired was New Jersey Devils head coach John Hines. Who'd you think was going to end up getting fired between Hines, Fizdale, and Shurmur first? I thought it was going to be Hines because the Devils were supposed to be good this year, and people picked them to finish in the top 3 in the division. People thought they were better than the Islanders and the Rangers, and then they flat out just underachieved. And I think they fired Hines later than they should have. They should have fired him at the end of last year. What did you make of the Devils situation?
Yeah, I mean, I don't follow the Devils too closely, but in hockey, coaches get fired earlier than in other sports. I mean, we've seen guys like a week into the season get fired, so that doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, you're right; they were supposed to be much better this season, and they're not, and that's how sports goes. So I think Fizdale is going to be next, but no, that did not surprise me. Well, they're one of the worst teams in hockey. I mean, there's no reason for you to keep them, and you have a youth movement there, and you're trying to be in the middle of a rebuild and become a playoff team. There's no reason to keep them.
Yeah, I thought Hines was going to go before Fizdale for the sole reason of the Devils were supposed to be good and the Knicks were not. And the same for the Giants. The Giants were not supposed to be good either. the Brooklyn Nets have been okay without Kyrie Irving. They've won a couple games here in a row to finally get above 500. Have you watched a little bit of Nets, and how do you think they've looked without Kyrie?
Yeah, I do. I do watch the Nets. I like the Nets. I like this team. I think they have good pieces. They have some depth. I think Garrett Temple is kind of, not really come out of nowhere, but a lot of people didn't even know they signed him. And he's actually a really good player, and he works with Kenny Atkinson's style in terms of this guy could just fire up threes. I think the other night he made like 6 threes, 7 threes. And they have guys stepping up that people haven't heard of. Listen, the track record has showed that teams sometimes when Kyrie's out do better. So I don't know if that's on him or what it is, or the teams just click. But there's something going on there. Listen, I don't think they're a better team without Kyrie. I think they're just having a solid stretch, and their schedule hasn't been crazy difficult. So we'll see over the long period if he did miss more time, what it would mean. But I think they're better with him. They're an intriguing team, though, because I like the depth. I like that they added Iman Shumpert. I'm curious when he's available to be off his suspension. Wilson Chandler in the mix, what he's going to add. When Chandler and Kyrie are out there, I think that's, besides Durant, a complete team. And that's when we can fully judge who these Nets are. Once you give them a couple of weeks to get a rhythm under the belt. But we'll see. But that's our playoff team. They're so far a little worse than I thought, but I think they are easily a playoff team, at least a 6 seed. So I think there's been so many moving parts and injuries. They haven't really got to gel yet, and we can't really judge who these Nets are until closer to the halfway point when Chandler and Kyrie are out there.
Yeah, I think the Nets will make the playoffs soon. Don't forget about Karis LeVert. I'm high on this kid. Obviously, he had that really bad injury last year, and then this year he got hurt too. I'm high on Karis LeVert, and I think they need him back too, along with Kyrie and Chandler. And I'm really interested to see how they pan out this year and whether if they could really end up making the second round or not. Because I don't think they'd be all that thrilled with a first round exit, considering all the moves they made. Granted, they don't have Kevin Durant this year, so it's very fascinating to see what the Nets end up becoming with all those guys. Tell me quickly before we go about your New York Post podcasts that you started recently.
Yeah, we launched about 6 weeks ago. I think time is flying by, damn. We have a Jets show, Gangs All Here, Giants, Blue Rush, Knicks, Big Apple Buckets, and today we launched our Rangers podcast, Up in the Blue Seats, which is getting rave reviews so far, as people love Ron Duguay. He's a fan favorite. Ladies love him. He's like in his 60s, but he looks much younger. In the first episode, he tells the story of the night he met Cher, which is an incredible story, and how he ended up with Cher and Gene Simmons' bed. It's just an amazing story. So definitely check them out. They, every day almost we got new content coming out there.
Yeah, and recently I listened to your podcast with Linda Cohn. That was really, really neat. I'm a big fan of Linda Cohn. I met her a few years ago back at a Ranger playoff game, and I told her who I was, and she knew who I was because of Twitter, since we've talked on Twitter multiple times, and she gave me such a giant hug. I'll never forget it, and I was so happy. She's my favorite Sports Center anchor. I'd love to have her as a podcast guest one day. She's absolutely brilliant. What did you make of your interview with Linda Cohn?
Yeah, I've spoken with Linda a few times. She's awesome. One of the best in the business. Super nice lady. From Long Island and Jewish. I mean, you can't beat that. So she's really made a name for herself and was a great hockey player too. She was a great goalie back in the day. So she's you don't meet a ton of people that are classy and genuinely nice like she is. So I love talking to her. You love hearing her story and how she made it. What does she miss about New York? So Linda, and she'll be coming on at some point on our Rangers podcast because she's a huge Rangers fan and she does that ESPN Plus hockey show. So yeah, one of my favorites in the industry.
Yeah, she's absolutely one of my favorites in the industry as well. And like I said, I'd love to have her as a podcast guest. I had her coworker John Buchacross on my podcast several times to do hockey. He's normally my main hockey guy, but I'd love to have Linda on. It would mean a lot to me if I had her on because she's my favorite. And obviously she hosts the Inside the Crease show on ESPN Plus with John Buchacross. And yeah, that's a good show as well. So it was good to have you on today. we'll probably have you on again in the new year, and I hope you have a happy holiday.
Same to you. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Have a good one.